very quickly, it was a part of, as I said, an MA project, and this is my dissertation, which I submitted about 3 weeks ago. So I'll just quickly go through these with you. So where did it come from and why I chose this topic? I'm also a coach, and I was very interested in the question of creativity. And part of that, reflecting on why it was important to me, I think partly was because I never considered myself as a creative person. So it was a personal journey for me to actually understand myself better and actually try to see whether it had some unlocking potential for me. The other side of it was I really believe that creativity is really important to us in every aspect of our life, how it sort of enriches our lives. And if you go back to caveman paintings 3,000 years ago, when they were still looking for food, they still had time to do some painting, because it was, I think, it's part of our psyche that creativity is important. The other side of it was that in terms of work context, I work in civil service, and I was head of R&D and procurement in Office for Low Emission Vehicles up until about end of March, which is dealing with electric, hydrogen cars, the infrastructure for them, I was working with some of the car companies that are sort of at the leading edge of design and innovation. So creativity and how the mindset of some of these people were working, that was really sort of intriguing for me. The other side of it was economic trends. I saw that some of these companies who have been really creative, really innovative, how they have blossomed during the economic crisis, and they have actually managed to buck the trends. So those were the reasons for why this research project was important to me. How I did the research, and I chose, there are 3 different methodologies, and I can explain to you if you have time at other time. But the process I chose was to get 2 coaches who use creative techniques to coach me over a 4-month period. And I'm looking at reflective daily journals of what's happening to me, recording them, and interviewing my colleagues, they were my peers and also my director, about looking at the impact of what's happening to me. And then also interviewing some other coaches who use creative techniques and getting them to see what the impact they see on their clients. Some of the questions I was trying to answer, what is creativity? I mean, there is a Ken Robinson definition, the process of having original ideas that have value. I think I want to go a little bit beyond that. I think sometimes you might not have an intrinsic value, sort of value in terms of monetary value, but it has some value, whatever is creative. For the person themselves is creative. So that's just as important, even if outside is not, people don't see that. However, in a coaching context, you need to have an external person to receive this creativity. And that was, my definition was about something new, something that takes you out of your comfort zone, and it's about, and that comfort zone could be something that you could be, is a felt sense, it could be somatic, and it's not purely just in terms of using cerebral. Talked to many other coaches, and again, the definition of creativity was as wide as anything else. And again, going back to why it was important, talking to other coaches and also some of my peers, it was mostly around thinking about why, in terms of our education system, our sort of employment, which values the cerebral and also analytical side of the brain, and that's what is mostly developed, and yet the creative side, the right side of the brain, hasn't been developed. So in terms of developing that in individuals is quite important. And the other side of it is around enrichment of life, in terms of music, theatre, about other things that is important to us, which makes our life much more richer. And finally, the economic benefits of how important it is to be creative and be innovative as a sort of individual company, as a nation. There were a number of this question was around what are the range of creative techniques that in coaching can be used. I personally believe coaching in itself is creative, because what it does, it's trying to get you to look at a problem in a different way. So that is a creative endeavor in its own. Then people's use of imagery, metaphors is a very, very powerful tool. Many people think we humans actually think in terms of metaphors. Analogies. There were earlier talk about the lady Jill Lynn, who is a choreographer and a dancer. And some people actually need to move to think, and for them to use of space and movement. And there is an Israeli coach which uses storytelling, theater, and that sort of thing, dealing with some of the people who are actually being affected by war and some of the traumas of that. So that was another thing. The other thing was, in terms of what is considered as a creative coaching think was anything that can actually makes you feel that you're experiencing something different and being playful, and that experience of having something different. Again, it could be in terms of feeling for yourself, in terms of feeling for the client, and in terms of being on the edge. This was the hardest question to answer, and I didn't come to a conclusion at the end of it. How can you measure? And in fact, I think it's the wrong question at the end of it. I think there is a tension between creativity and measurement. Once you try to measure it, you start actually thinking analytically about it, and which is moving to a different. I think the better question was to understand how something is creative, and then trying to see how you can make that better or more creative, rather than trying to measure that. Some people came out in terms of linking it to emotions, looking at if someone's personal self-image improves through coaching because of this, or it could be a somatic feeling, richness of their experience that they have that could be measured, it could be a scaling thing. Some people said actually creativity is about creation. So actually, if you create 10 widgets and then create 20 widgets the next day, you have increased your creativity. And although it's a very creative way of looking at it, some might argue with that. Finally, it was around what are the enabling beliefs that supports creativity. And it was showing that it's very different for everybody, but the key question is that we all are creative and we all have potentials to be creative. The thing that in terms of creativity is that you need to increase your resilience to getting things wrong. So that is about having the courage and also being able to deal with knockbacks. And that is where the coaching also comes in terms of allowing the person to believe that, yes, for me, in order to be creative, in order to create something new and something good, then I might get something wrong, and be able to forgive themselves and move on. I interviewed a number of people who were songwriters and musicians and that has one of the things that they said, be able to forgive yourself, move on, the thing didn't work, try something else, or you see, that's not the best thing I can do, but, it's good enough. So, and that was part of that. The other thing was that it came out of this, there is a process and discipline in terms of what the reason that is in terms of the process that I did, which was sitting down and as part of my coaching that I was receiving, one of the exercises was to sit down every morning and write down 3 pages of longhand of brain dump. So, and that was, for me, someone who's been an engineer, and that was quite a hard thing. But I very quickly got into it. Within a week, I suddenly one morning came to me, why am I writing just my brain down? Why don't I write a story? I started writing a story, and the next day I knew that the story was developing, I could see the characters, and a week later my coach challenged me, said, why don't you write poetry? And for me, again, as an engineer who looked at poets and writers and as very creative, I never saw myself as that, especially when English is not my first language, I found that very challenging. And yet, the next day I went, and without even thinking about it, I could put words together that more or less rhyme. And for me, that was a shift in terms of self-belief. So the shift came from actually seeing the evidence of it. And so there is a process and a discipline to this, which creates that shift. So the conclusions of that. So the shift is around the self-belief. However, the self-belief needs supportive evidence. And that supportive evidence comes through techniques, comes through a process that creates that. And one needs to accept that there is no quick fix and trust the process. It's a bit like, for me, it's about learning to swim. You start learning to swim, you do a little bit, and for you to be able to swim the channel, you need to actually have that endurance and keep doing it for over a long time in order to build that up. And that's for the client. But in terms of a coach, one of the things that I learned from that is to show vulnerability in a session to the client so they can feel that, yes, I can get things wrong and it's okay, the coach is getting it wrong. And that could probably apply to teaching as well, in terms of allowing the students that I'm getting it wrong and therefore there's nothing wrong with getting things wrong. The other thing that I in terms of this, my reflections are, I was very eager for this to work. So I think it worked for me in terms of that, because I wanted this project to succeed. But in coaching, not many clients come to you, but at the same time, they might not be that keen on the thing, on the progress of this, or they might not be that committed. So it is important to be the quality of coach, and the receptiveness of the client is important to that. Finally, thank you. If there is any feedback, I'll give you some, that's my email address. And if there is anything else that you think, or there is any research that you come across, I'll be more than happy to look at that and welcome your comments. I'm looking at trying to get a wider sample of research from other coaches as well. Any questions?
Thank you for sharing what you have. And going through that process of conducting that research, I just wondered, sort of, if you could today say how your own coaching of clients has changed, if at all.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question, because as a coach, you go to a session with a client, and your thing is about the client wanting to change. Okay. So, and lots of times you feel that you can change, and client can change. However, that hadn't happened to me, in the sense that having a big shift from somebody who didn't believe in my own creativity, suddenly getting the evidence, suddenly believing in my own creativity. So I could see the shift happen for myself. So in terms of going to a coaching session, coaching somebody, I can do it more authentically, because I believe it can happen. Whether I share my experience with them or I don't, I know I can do it more authentically, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
So in terms of improving my practice as a coaching practice, that's what impact it had.
Yes. And just staying with that question, obviously useful to hear sort of your own views of things changing. I'm just wondering, just following on from that, whether you've had any feedback from clients, because I don't know, are they aware of you having conducted this kind of research? No. So I assume not. So I just wondered whether you'd heard anything from them that suggested that they sensed in you a change.
No, I mean, I haven't. Over this period, I have not sought. I mean, I always get feedback. There is a feedback sheet that I give to clients to give feedback to me, but there hasn't been any kind of specific feedback that shows there is that impact on me, that's what has changed. I know myself, I'm doing it differently.
Yes.
I know I'm trying things and it could go wrong totally, and being more vulnerable with the clients. So that part of it, I know I'm doing it, but I don't know how quickly how perceptive the clients are to pick up. I haven't had that feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamid.